Welcome back, y'all. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. There's a lot of questions going around with our Tennessee Vols on social media and everywhere else, whether it's from our fan base or from different fan bases or media, what have you. So we will be addressing some of those questions in today's video, and that would include what are we going to do about Doug Utu now that he's officially flipped to Oregon? Who do we have in mind that maybe could come in and fill that spot at interior offensive lineman at one of those guard spots coming up this season? As always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so first and foremost, Doug Utu has decommitted from our Tennessee Volunteers and officially flipped to the Oregon Ducks. So as y'all can see with On3, we are currently 8th nationally, 6th in the SEC. We now only have 23 commits. And I just want to kind of scroll through here to talk about the interior offensive linemen that we do still have committed in this class. And we're going to be starting off right here with Nick Morris. So he is a 4-star. He's rated right around the same spot that Doug Utu is. And he's really probably going to be more of a center body for us. But y'all know that we love to cross-train all of our offensive linemen. So he will get the opportunity to play in some other spots as well. Just thinking about guys like William Satterwhite, who's probably going to be the center moving forward. I think that he might end up winning that spot next season. So that maybe could free up a guy like Nick Moore to still get those reps at center, but also get some reps at guard. Could he come in and potentially be a guy that could play early for us? We will see as time goes on. Now, the next and the final player that we have committed in this class that is in interior offensive lineman is going to be Antoni Cade Agumoro. Now, he is a 3-star. He's rated a little bit lower, but at the same time, he's very new to playing football. I love his game. I love his mean streak, his nastiness, and you can just tell that he's got all the tools necessary. Actually, he kind of puts me in the mind a lot of Doug Utu, with just the way that, like his body is made and all that type of stuff. You can tell he's got a very strong base. He's got a good, strong core. I think he's quick-footed, and he's got a very powerful punch. So I think that he's a guy that, as he continues to play football, is just going to get better and better exponentially. Will he be ready to come in and compete for a starting job next season? He could be, right? I mean, you just don't know how quickly can he get there. But I think that he is a guy that for sure on down the line should be able to add a whole lot to this team. But let's take a look at some other players in the 2025 class that are interior offensive linemen that maybe Tennessee would try to target. Starting off up at the top with Solomon Thomas. He's a 5-star interior offensive lineman. He has good size, about 6'4", 315 pounds. Currently committed to Florida State. Now, we know Florida State is having a whole bunch of problems right now. Could he be a player that maybe Tennessee could persuade to come in and at least give us a very realistic look? He's from Jacksonville, Florida, so pretty close to that Tallahassee area. Maybe he grew up as a Florida State fan, but you just never know. I mean, maybe we throw a little bit of extra NIL right there at him. Maybe he will, take us seriously. Next is going to be Josh Petty, who we know grew up as a Tennessee fan, and he is currently committed to Georgia Tech. I don't know how realistic it is that we could flip him from there, but he would be a pretty decent option. Reach out, see what the heck's going on there, and just kind of keep all of your options open. I think that he would maybe do the exact same thing. After that, we've got Michael Carroll, who is committed to Alabama. I don't know a whole lot about him, but, he's from Pennsylvania. He might be one of those guys that is just here recently since Alabama. Well, I guess it hasn't been recent, but, over the past, maybe couple of decades or so since Alabama has been really, really good, he's been, he's turned into one of those newer fans. Who knows, man? If Tennessee comes out, has a great season, and shows that we can be that powerhouse program as well, maybe he'll take us seriously. At the same time, y'all, I don't know how much the staff is going to like really any of these players, obviously outside of Josh Petty, that we know that the staff did like, but they kind of backed off of him. It kind of sounds like towards the end for whatever reason. I think that you got to open things back up because our guy right here, Doug Utu, who's only listed as a 4-star, he should have been a 5-star, no questions asked. He's really, really good. I mean, he is that dude. I think that he had a great opportunity to come in next season and play. I think he definitely would have played, maybe could have started at one of those guard spots. And it sounds like Oregon maybe has promised him that he could play tackle. If that's the case, just like Timmy G said last night, hey, maybe you say, look, we will let you have a realistic opportunity to come in and win the tackle job and just kind of like let the chips fall where they may, because I still don't know if Doug Utu plays tackle at Oregon. I think that that's kind of like a false promise. But he does have a teammate. And we'll kind of scroll down here so that you can see his teammate. I know he's in here somewhere, but right here. So his teammate right here, he's also committed to Oregon. So maybe they're just like best friends. I don't know what all Oregon did to get him to flip, but obviously getting him to flip back would still be another one of those options. Now, outside of this, another Bishop Gorman offensive lineman that is committed to Miami. They've got a ton of talent, within that team. I don't know how realistic it would be for us to be able to flip him. A couple of guys right here committed to LSU. I think that you got to reach out to all these guys, right? I mean, you got to reach out to everybody. They've got 3 right here committed in this class. And I mean, boom, 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 right? Like back to back to back. So they've got some good ones coming in. Maybe they want to just, back out of that because LSU is supposed to have the best offensive line in the entire country heading into this season. They don't look like that up to this point. So maybe these guys will take Tennessee seriously. Also, I want to point out, I mean, look, there's a whole lot of Georgia players that are committed, or there's a whole lot of players that are committed to Georgia that are interior offensive linemen that I think that Tennessee should have a chance to maybe get in on, especially if you talk about Juan Gaston, who did have Tennessee in his finalists before he, ultimately decided to commit to Georgia. There is another one that I actually think I've watched him play. He has looked really good. Right here, Dontrell Glover, boy, oh boy. He looks like the real deal. But these types of guys, right, that are going to Georgia at this point, a lot of times they're more like, well, we want to go to the hottest school, and Georgia probably was the hottest school for them. So I think that that really plays a very major factor in why several of the people that go to Georgia go there. The thing about it is Georgia is not going to have that good of a season this year. Finally, they're going to have a very tough schedule. So I think with them losing, I'm going to say they're going to lose 3 games this season. They probably won't make the playoffs for back-to-back seasons. Here in the state of Georgia, where I live, I promise you, there's going to be a whole lot of talk everywhere, a whole lot of buzz about, Bobo needs to get fired. It always starts off with him. He's always the very first person that gets scapegoated. So that's going to start it off. And then, it'll just continue to trickle. And there'll be a whole lot of question marks. I would not be surprised if some of these guys that are currently committed to Georgia, not just on the offensive line, but in other spots, don't back out of that and kind of start to open things back up. So there's plenty of options just from the high school ranks. At the same time, the transfer portal will always be an option. I think that we definitely need to add at least one more interior offensive lineman to this class. And sticking with the offensive line, let's talk about our current players because there's been some question marks about are they doing a good enough job of protecting Nico? This is something that Timmy G and I also talked about last night in that midweek chat. So if y'all did miss it, please make sure to tune in to that next week. We are very, very heavy in the chat and we try to field everybody's questions. And, I think that we have a pretty good time there. So biggest question, right? Can we protect Nico? People aren't talking too much about our run blocking, which has been absolutely phenomenal. We see guys like, Q breaking us down, talking about, oh my gosh, they're moving people to the sideline. And we just have a whole bunch of warriors. We have a whole bunch of bullies up front. And I think that that could be echoed not just from our starters, but even the people that come in. That's just the attitude of this offensive line. So that's really where it starts. If you want to have a dominant offensive line, if you want for your offensive line to be good, it starts with the run blocking. And I think that, regardless of what Pro Football Focus actual individual grades are, they've played really, really well. And I do take the actual grading portion of it with a grain of salt. But what Pro Football Focus is good for is to just kind of show you how many snaps did each player get in. I think that they can figure out when some pressure was given up by, each individual player. So we're going to be talking primarily about that today and the pass protection. We'll be starting off right here at number 5 with Cooper Mays. And again, we're going to be just focusing a lot more on the pressure section right here. So you can see that Cooper Mays has had 106 pressure opportunities, and he's only given up 1 pressure the entire season. That's good for a 99.5% success rate. So that's really good, obviously, by our center, Cooper Mays. Now let's come on down here to number 12, Javante Spraggins, who is our starting right guard. He's had 100 pressure opportunities, and he has given up 3 pressures, which, listen, that's still good. It's not perfect. Nobody on here is going to be perfect. There's no offensive line on the face of this planet that plays perfect. If you look at any team that plays modern football, that's not running the football 99% of the time, that throws the football some, you will see some pressures given up by at least 1 to 2 of their offensive linemen. I don't care who it is. That's just the name of the game. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward. He also did give up 1 sack. So Nico, I believe, has been sacked 5 times throughout the entire season. Only 3 of those sacks have been given up by our offensive line. So either way, okay, he's at 98%. So that is really good. I think that he's playing well. Now let's come on down here to number 15, our starting left guard, Andre Carrick. He's had 86 pressure opportunities. and he's only given up one pressure. That's good for 99.4%. Okay, on down right here to number 16, Lance Hurd. He's had 53 opportunities. He has given up 3 pressures, and his success rate is at 97.2%. So there are some things that he can get cleaned up. I think that mostly with him, he needs to get himself into game shape. It doesn't really help that he missed last weekend, but hopefully this week he's just kind of, getting himself obviously back healthy because he was dealing with that ankle thing. But he needs to make sure that he's getting himself in shape so that he can go for a full 60 minutes. After that, I'm going to scroll this up for y'all. After that, we're going to go to number 18 and talk about John Campbell. He's had 64 opportunities. He's only given up one pressure. That's good for 99.2%. Same thing with him. I think on some of the times that he has, or, on the only time that he has given up a pressure to Nico, he is dealing with a little bit of a knee deal. Probably will be dealing with that the entire season. We got to just hopefully, okay, and we'll talk about this here in just a second. Hopefully, we can bring in some of these backup guys that can spell him, and hopefully, they will play a little bit better than they have up to this point. Now, let's talk right here at number 14 about Dane Davis, okay? He's had 75 opportunities. He's given up 1 sack, and he's also given up 2 pressures, so he's good for 98%. It seems like maybe he's given up more than that, right? But I think that on one of those sacks, it was actually given to Dylan Sampson. So he's not necessarily blocking as poorly as maybe we would think. Now, some of this stuff, of course, it is just numbers. You have to kind of go by the eye test on some of this stuff. And I would say that with Dane Davis, he's got to kind of work on his core strength. He tends to kind of get off balance just a little bit. But that's something that, great news, guys. I mean, you can improve on that every single day. You can get better at that every single day. So I would expect that that will be a point of emphasis for him from our strength staff, from the coaching staff. But he's a guy that understands what to do. So we've got some good depth right there. Okay, he's not perfect, but again, it's really just all about having some depth, just being able to kind of spell some guys whenever you need to. Now let's talk about, scroll that up just a taste. Number 17, we've got Larry Johnson III, 42 opportunities, and he has 1 pressure, 98.8%. We talked a lot about him primarily playing on the left side, but I think that he could maybe get some more opportunities on the right side. And that would just make this entire offensive line a lot stronger as a whole. But let's talk about a few more players. Number 23, Jackson Lampley. He does rotate in some at left guard. And just as far as the pressures go, he's had 40 opportunities, and he has given up 2 pressures. He's got a 97.5% success rate. I like what I've seen from him for the most part. Just a couple of times where maybe he's a little bit too slow to get out of his stance. Everything that we're going to talk about with all these players is fixable. It's not like we've got a bunch of guys out there that can't get any better at some of the smaller fundamental things. So I'm fine with Jackson Lampley. I think that he's going to be okay. We can also talk about Shem Umarov, who we don't know when he's going to be coming back, but let's just take a look at his numbers. He's only had 18 opportunities. He has given up 2 pressures in that. That's not great at all, but he's at 94.4%. And was there anybody else that we had to talk about? I think that is good. Oh, you know what? Let's talk about number 20, Aiden Bussell. He's had 12 opportunities, only given up 1 pressure, and that's good for about 95.8%. So I think that that's pretty solid for the most part from our offensive line. There's several things that we can do within our scheme if we had to bring in some of these guys, especially some of these tackles, guys like that on the outside. We've got tight ends that we feel like can help us blocking some. And I think that D. Samp, he didn't have the best game last weekend, but if he can just continue to grow as a pass blocker, maybe more so of knowing who to pick up and not so much of not being physically capable of picking them up, then yeah, I mean, he's a guy that could help us out there too. A whole lot of other different things that we can do just as far as the different schemes and maybe getting the ball out of our hands a little bit quicker, some rollouts, things like that, if we do feel like this turns into a problem. But I'm telling y'all, this is a really good offensive line. And, it's just people get a little bit too hard on them thinking that they're going to be perfect. This is not Madden, right? Like, we're not making these players. They're not going to have perfect reps every single time. Nico and every other quarterback in the entire country is going to feel some type of pressure every now and then. It's not like we're playing up against scrubs. These guys are on scholarship too. And I mean, they're pass rush specialists. So I feel fine about the offensive line, y'all. And hopefully it won't be too much of a question mark moving forward. Next, I want to talk about Nico Iamaleava, because some people are saying, well, he's not playing that great. He's not being Superman and all this type of stuff. But I think that Nico is doing a really, really solid job, and we'll just kind of go through some of his metrics and his numbers right here to prove that. So if you start off right here, you can see that he's actually completing his passes at about 70%. Obviously, that's awesome, okay? We haven't really, okay, take it all the way back. Look at the games that Nico has played in. I think that really he hasn't had to do as much necessarily. Now, I would say that in that NC State game, okay, whenever they're dropping 8, Nico had some growing pains there because he had to understand sometimes you just got to throw the football out of bounds. You can't force it into coverage. So he's learning from that perspective. But he also, for the most part, he did a really nice job just of managing that game, taking what the defense gave to him. But we were very, very run heavy in that game. And same thing kind of happened in that Oklahoma game. Wasn't very many opportunities down the field for him to throw it. And that wasn't really necessarily based off of what Oklahoma was doing on defense so much. It was more of what Coach Heupel wanted to see from his team. Now, we know that we had pretty much 2 of our starting tackles down for most of that game, or really for all of that game. But, I think that Coach Heupel wanted to make sure that he took really good care of Nico. At the same time, he wanted to see his team win that game a certain way. So Nico just hasn't necessarily, he hasn't had to carry this entire team. But if you talk about him just managing every game, I think that he's done a really, really nice job of that. He's also thrown for 892 yards, averaging about 10 yards per reception. He's got 7 touchdowns. He's also thrown 2 interceptions. Both of those interceptions came from NC State. We know that one of them was whenever he's getting hit, so that's not really on him. The fumbles that he had last weekend, I don't think that those were on him either. That was on the offensive line. Now, I know that I've said some good things about the offensive line, and, I will continue to kind of back that up, but I mean, they don't play perfect, right? I mean, there will be some errors. And I don't think that, really, it's hard to put any of those turnovers outside of that one pick versus NC State on Nico. It really, really wasn't. I think that most people in those situations probably would have turned the football over. So as we are moving through this, we can see right here that his big time throw percentage is 6.4. And let me see, his throwing with pressure percentage is 4.4. Let's come on down here because there's some more things that I wanted to take a look at specifically. So right here where it says P2S percent, that is pressure to sack percent. Some people have been saying Nico's pocket presence sucks. I mean, he's got to do a better job. He is he's getting sacked with pressure 20.8% of the time, which means that about 80% of the time, whenever he has pressure, he is avoiding sacks. That's a good number, y'all. I mean, you've got to, I think that some people's expectations are just, it's like superhuman, right? Like you have to understand that these are human beings. They're not robots. They're not going to go out there and play perfect. So I think that that's really good. Actually, it's better than guys like Arch Manning. It's better than guys like Dylan Gabriel, who plays for Oregon. It's better than Alabama's quarterback. So he's doing it at a really, really high level. Now, there is a player that I saw. I mean, there's several players that are higher than him, which doesn't really mean a whole lot to me necessarily, but Cam Ward, right? Cam Ward, I think he's at like 6.7% on this. So that's what like elite looks like in this category. And Nico is still growing. He's going to get better at this. I've seen him getting better at this every single week. So I would expect that number will start to dwindle over the next couple of games for sure. Another pretty interesting stat that I saw was with the average amount of time. Oh, here it is right here. Right there, 2.79 seconds. That's about how long Nico has every single drop back. That is his average. So I think that that's a pretty good amount of time. That tells you how good the offensive line is on a consistent basis. And it's not just with the offensive line, but everyone else that's in there to help block for Nico. So I think that just with such a young player, knowing that this is his floor, he's just kind of starting to get up off of the floor. And like Timmy G said last night, we don't want to peak too early, but we're starting to get there. He's going to get better and better. The offensive line gets better and better. We're going to open things up even more to give him more opportunities to kind of make those plays. Whenever you're watching him move and he's keeping his eyes down the field, throwing on the run, think about how many plays have been called back because we had a player down the field or we had a holding call or just something stupid. Nico could very, very easily have well over 1,000 yards. I say he could be somewhere around close to like 1,100 yards passing. And maybe 8 or 9 touchdowns. Of course, coulda, woulda, shoulda, all that type of stuff. But y'all get what my point is. I think that he improvises well. Like he is elite in that category. So just this thought of Nico needs to get better, you know what I mean? And all that. And people kind of just being scared, the whole, we're scared of everything deal. Nico is fine. This team is fine. It's not going to be perfect. We're getting better, but the floor is what you should be very, very excited about. We are 4-0. And we're not even close to playing our best ball just yet. And the last player that we'll be talking about today will be James Pearce Jr. There's been a lot of questions about why isn't he getting pressure on the quarterback. Is it something that we should be concerned about as Tennessee fans? I don't think so, and I'm going to show you why. First and foremost, okay, this is where James Pearce is, and let's take a look at the sacks first. We've got Tyree West at number 1. James Pearce is actually at number 2, and then I mean so on and so forth. We've got several players, okay, that have sacks this season. And I just think that that goes to show how deep this entire defensive line is, period, point blank. Now, if you take a look at the hurries, okay, James Pearce has the most hurries on this team. He has 10 hurries. So a hurry is, whenever you are getting close to a sack. I think that there's, I don't know if it's a hurry or if it's a pressure, it's about the same thing inside of my mind. But a hurry and a pressure is like one step away from getting that sack. So James Pearce is still getting pressure on that quarterback. Okay. He's still, even with teams double teaming him, chipping him, triple teaming him, and all that, he's still wreaking havoc. And oh, by the way, our other players are still getting to the quarterback. But whenever you come over here to the tackling, okay, the missed tackle percentage, James Pearce is at 66.7%. And that actually, yeah, that's the highest on the entire team. You understand why that is? Well, I don't necessarily 100% understand why, but I think that it's probably because James Pearce is pressing a little bit too much. He's getting to the quarterback, but he's missing tackles. Do you think that that number is going to go up or it's going to go down as the season goes on? It's definitely going to start to go down. And as it goes down, you know what's going to go up? His sack numbers. He's going to get some sacks throughout this season. I can guarantee you that. I mean, he's getting there. He's doing what he's supposed to do. Also, something that's pretty interesting is if you look at his coverage grade, I think his coverage grade is one of the highest on this entire team. Let me see if I can find that for you right here. Boom. So yeah, look at that. James Pearce actually has the highest coverage grade on this team. Now, again, if we take those grades with a grain of salt from Pro Football Focus, because I think that he does a nice job in coverage, but to say that it's the best on the team, I mean, that's kind of that's kind of out there. And you do see that Jamal McCoy is right there behind him. So that's just a few more of the stats. Really, I just wanted to highlight the versatility of James Pearce and just let y'all know, man, yeah, this dude is a dog. He's still affecting every game, I promise you. And it's going to show up more and more in that stat sheet. I know a lot of people like to beat their chest about those stats. It's coming, y'all. Trust me when I tell you, I think that this weekend will be a big one for James Pearce. Not only will this be probably the best athlete at quarterback that James Pearce will have faced up to this point, he's also going to be the biggest. And he's not that shifty. I think that it's going to be, he's a bigger target that James can kind of get a hold of and bring him down. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole matchup plays out, coming up next weekend. But that is going to be it for this video. I wanted to try to keep it as short as possible, just kind of touch on a few things. Let me know if that answered y'all's questions, or do you have some more? We'd be happy to do a video on that. But as always, thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.